We always get an opportunity to practice what we learn here, and it usually comes in a manner that we never expected. I want to finish just by saying regarding our Deep Dive Wednesday that, again, the topics we're talking about are ones submitted by fellow students, and we want to thank students who have sent in things that they wanted to hear Guy discuss, and we want to encourage you to please continue doing so for our future Deep Dive Wednesdays. And you can do that by sending your comment, your question, the topic you want Guy to discuss to guyfinley.org/contact. And that's where we are collecting these topics for future Deep Dive Wednesdays. So with that, I think we are ready to get started. I can read the topic and key lesson, Guy. Go. And we'll get started. Here is tonight's topic and the key lesson. Self-liberation begins with being free to see what is. And the key lesson Guy's written is this: the mind asleep to itself doesn't realize that it created the problem that it can't stop trying to resolve, and that the more it struggles to try and think through a solution to its self-induced conflict, the greater grows its struggle to escape its unseen, self-induced suffering. Turn it over to you to offer any introductory comments or to get started.
Well, I think in the interest of time, we'll just get into it. But I will say quickly, welcome. I'm glad that you're still with us if you've remained through our technological hurdle. We're always doing the best we can, you can be sure of that. And that on Deep Dive Wednesdays, we, as John just said, have received from you out there and from the students in the room quotations or topics of interest that are something that person wishes to explore more deeply, ostensibly for the reasons that it will help them develop. But in essence, because there is no question that a real aspirant will ever ask that doesn't apply in one way or another to every aspirant, because you'll see that's true, we explore these things together. And together means that John's going to go through as many of these as we can go through. I may just go, we're getting 15 minutes late, I might just run through the whole hour and then we'll forget the second part of the talk. We'll see what happens, how far I get. I do the best I can to answer as thoroughly as I can all of the questions and comments that have come in. Of course, it's impossible to give a complete soliloquy on any subject, but we will endeavor as best we can. When I have the topic read, I always invite the men and women in the room and you out there, while I don't have time for you to participate online. We look at this together. We look at what is it that's being asked? What are we looking at here? Because every person here will look at that topic or that question through the eyes of their own past experience, through the knowledge they have. And when we can begin to see that it's possible to get a number of different angles to look at the same question or the same concern, then we can begin to see that some of these concerns, they don't necessarily apply to us, but these do. In this way, we can fill in the picture more completely, and as we'll look at tonight, the more clearly we can see any particular moment, no matter what it is, the more clear our action will be on that particular moment, in that particular moment. And with that, John, let's get going. It's right to the first question, I think.
You bet. Here is the first question and topic that was submitted, and coincidentally, it was from myself, John. Here's what I wrote. One of the most valuable things I've ever heard guys say was this: right action will be clear in the moment that it is needed. The problem is you don't want to wait for that moment and clarity. There's been so much in that thought that is valuable for me. For example, the importance of being aware of practicing a right patience, the futility of thought. But I'd appreciate a deeper understanding of what you said.
So what does John want to know? You can read the question. I'm talking to the students in the room. We have a rather smaller group tonight for whatever reasons. What is John saying? Chris?
How can I really know the right thing to do in the moment I need to know?
She said, how can I know the right thing to do in the moment when I need to know the right thing to do? Anybody else? Terry?
How do I develop the patience to suffer myself?
Terry says, running a little bit deeper right out of the gate, how do I develop the patience to suffer myself? John didn't say anything about suffering in his question, did he? No, but so you're looking at it and saying, what is it that it takes in order to be present enough for this right action? Okay, we'll look at that. Anybody else in the room? Well, I haven't time this evening to properly chastise you for your passive state. Well, maybe I do. Telling me you effortlessly know the right action to take. How ludicrous. What he's saying at the bottom of this question is essentially, there comes a moment and I'm not quite prepared for it. And because I'm not prepared for it, I'm thrown into a certain je ne sais quoi, a certain agitation, a certain anxiety, a certain feeling of rush, confusion, maybe loss. So the moment comes, I'm not ready for it, there it is. And I would like to know, properly so, what is the action to take in this moment? But the moment isn't your perception of the event. The moment is your experience of the event, and what you perceive in that moment is your own reaction. So really what John is saying is, what can I do in these moments where along comes these conditions where suddenly I'm in the grip of a reaction? What is the right action in the grip of a reaction? Because apparently I don't know what the right action is, because often I start running around taking wrong actions. John's sitting right here. I'll ask him, is that a fair assumption?
Yes.
I don't want to make mistakes. And I'm always facing moments, big and small, with some form of suffering or concern connected to something come to me, maybe my wife, my friends, my kids, maybe my job, maybe my health, could be anything. And also implied in the question, I want to know what the right action to take. How do I get to that right action? Is the realization that all of my actions to date have not really resolved anything. Because more or less I keep running into the same moments that bring up the same kind of reaction and bring up the same scramble to know what the right action to take is. And then, as usual, I always find myself being taken along by some choice that I don't know is the right choice. I'm conflicted about that. I'll throw this in early. When you know the right action, you're no longer in conflict. Which means, if you can reverse engineer that, it's conflict that is driving you to take a right action. It's conflict that's saying, what's the right action here? Yes or no? Can you see it? And the first thing you need to understand is that conflict never knows the right action, ever. But I'm faced with the fact that I'm often in conflict when these moments come. And now, taking this question to the next step, I would like to know, what is the right action to take when suddenly I feel like I'm a captive of conditions pressing me to make a decision? Please. The first thing to understand, and always the first action is not to go into thought about what just happened. That is not the first action, and that's always your first action. But you're not actually thinking about what just happened. What you're analyzing in that moment is your reaction to the moment. And then you hope the reaction that's born out of some kind of conflict will release you from the conflict inherent in the reaction you're having. So what would be the first right action to take? no matter what, no matter how severe or simple it might be, and it runs the gamut, believe me, from A to Z. The first right action, Patricia, first right action is to recognize that I'm about to step into a wrong action. Not try to take a right action. The right action is to watch the temptation of the wrong action. That's the first action. Now, the other thing to understand about this is important. I don't want to rush. We got off to a slow start, but this won't be worthwhile if I don't take some considerate measures to make sure you understand what I'm saying. I go home, I get a phone call. I come to the foundation and the sound is all messed up. Any one of 1,000 different things, from a doctor calling and saying, see you later, to something with my finances. Just like that, there is what? There is the awareness of a disturbance, yes or no? I wasn't disturbed before I talked to you. I wasn't disturbed before I saw that text message. But in a heartbeat, I'm disturbed. The nature of every disturbance is not what your mind points to as the problem. Your mind points to that person or that situation as being the reason why suddenly there's a sense of stress and strain going on in me. So that's why we say the first action is to slow down and catch something that is pointing as it is to the problem, so that you can understand the first right action is to slow myself down sufficiently enough to become aware of the fact that what? Whenever there is a disparity in your life, and by the way, revelation through resistance is the result of a ceaseless disparity in creation. You'll never remember that. Go back and try to write it down if you can. Simply that means here comes something from out of the blue, something timeless, something I couldn't have imagined, something that seems to have taken shape in some world outside of my own. And like Eric was saying when he got up here to talk, here comes my father's comment. Here comes that circumstance, and boom, like that. I am what? I'm having a reaction, am I not? Because why? Because I came into the moment bringing with me whatever the conditioning is relative to my environment, my social life, and that nature, that fixed self, runs into something that says, hey, look at this, see this about yourself. Something touches what is ordinarily not touched. Are you touchy? So here I am, and suddenly I'm touchy. You can't have a moment of this disparity between what is actual, what is happening, and to whom and what it is happening to. You can't have that disparity without something being born in that moment as a result of the inequality. That's what it is, an inequality that says, what you hear it as, what do I do? What it's really saying in that moment isn't a question of what you need to desire or not desire. It's a question of a certain order of desire appearing in this consciousness that is not intended to settle itself. You believe it's up to you to resolve that problem with that person or that place or that circumstance. Do you not? Is that always not what's going on? And my best action is always determined by my best estimation of that circumstance that's produced this conflict. Yes or no? So there is innate in every disturbance a desire that you don't see. You have nothing ever disturbs you that isn't born in that same moment, a desire to reconcile whatever the condition is according to your best interest and your best knowledge. That's where the wish to resolve it comes from, the past. The past cannot resolve anything. There's no right action that the past can suggest to the present moment. Not one. Why is there no right action the past can suggest in the moment to the disturbance? Why is that? Anybody?
It's not on the same level.
Well, for one thing, it's not on the same level as the actual moment. But the other thing is How many times have you heard this? My God, a person should get violently ill. Think, I've learned my lesson. Let's not have the past repeat itself. Let's use our history and become different. Tell me you've used your history to be a different human being. The only time you've ever really become a different human being is when you've seen that history appears as a temptation to lead you to a promised land that belongs to a part of yourself that just wants to reincarnate itself. Can you see that with me? No reaction to a reaction can ever resolve the reaction. No reaction to any reaction will ever resolve that reaction. Do you understand what that means? I have a reaction. That reaction tells me what to do to get rid of the experience of the reaction I don't want. No reaction that is a reaction can ever resolve the condition responsible for that disturbance in you. The more you see this, the more you understand there is something going on all the time where instead of using the moment and realizing I've just been awakened, you don't say I've just been awakened, you say let me go further to sleep. Let me go down this road of thought, of comparison, of analysis. Let me get deep into all the things that are part and parcel with this problem. Let me get in there and mix it up so that out of that chaos, I'll find one path, one promise that will deliver me from the pain that I'm in. The right action begins with recognizing that you have never in your life had a negative reaction that has ever released you from the consciousness responsible for it. That's the first right understanding. Do you understand that? So if I have the right understanding, what is the action born out of that new understanding that no reaction that I identify with is going to release me from the condition I blame for it? What would then be the right action? Anybody? Anybody? Am I going too fast for you? I've been here 1,000 times. I felt the stab of that anxiety. I feel the need to rush. I really want to say something to that person. I really want to say something to that person. I better make a plan. I better think this through and get everything outlined so that I know exactly what the right steps are to get rid of this suffering. Every last one of the first solutions that come to your mind when you first start feeling that suffering are the extension of that suffering. And when you know the fact of that, you know the right action to take. Just like that. Which is what? Hold on to your chair. No action at all. No identification with any emotion. No saying I to any thought or feeling that comes along to do what? To tempt you into another action that you've taken in one form or another 1,000 different ways. So what's the right action to take? And what is no action? The repression of the condition? Or is no action the summary realization, I need to be the witness to everything that's unfolding here and not participate in any one part that's telling me this is the whole, because no one part knows the whole. And that's what you have to see. When you do, you'll understand something of what right action is. And last word, patience. Now, I'm going to suffer myself instead of save myself, so that in suffering myself, I'm witnessing the part of me that's been here 1,000,000 years, done the same thing in one way or another 1,000,000 times, and now I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to watch it yell, I'm going to watch it scream, and I'm going to be the observer of what? If I want to know the right action, I have to see the whole action. If I don't see the whole action, I see in part. If I see in part, I act incompletely. That's why it goes on and on. Let's go on to number 2.
Thank you, Guy. Here's our second topic and question for this evening. It comes from Jane. She says, Lower consciousness is often spoken of as being embodied by a lot of people and responsible for a lot of suffering. A few meetings ago, Abraham Lincoln and the Buddha were included in the mix. Does this mean in some far future time, enlightened goodness will tip the balance of unbridled darkness and humanity's reality will change for the better? No, I don't really need to know, but a positive answer would give a slice of hope to those who will come after, sort of like someone who plants a tree at an age they will never know its shade.
First, this lower consciousness is not in you. You are in it. This lower consciousness is not in you. You are in it. That's why you don't know when it acts, because when it acts, it tells you, you are you, and here's what you need to do about the effect of living inside of me, so that you hope to keep changing what it is that brings you your experience by listening to the source of that experience explain to you why you're going through what you're going through. Do you understand that at all? That's quite deep in one respect. If lower consciousness was just in you, then every human being on the planet wouldn't have the same basic negative effect of that unconscious nature. It's like a fish thinking that the ocean is in it. The ocean is not in the fish. Fish lives because of the ocean, but the ocean, the ocean is in the fish. So, next. In this question, there's several misconstrued ideas. First, lower consciousness as being embodied by a lot of people. Does this mean in some future time enlightened goodness will tip the balance of unbridled darkness and humanity's reality will change for the better? She's not alone. We speak of these things as if the lower consciousness in itself is responsible for the hatred and the violence. That's the assumption. The lower consciousness is responsible for all the conflict, all the sorrow, all the suffering. And if we could just change that lower consciousness, somehow everything would get better. Is a trumpet responsible for the kind of notes that it blows? Huh? Is the trumpet responsible for that sound? That disharmonious? No? Who's responsible for that sound? The player. This is the great mistake. It just reiterates itself because that unconsciousness clings to certain ideas. Like in the end of it, someone plants a tree at an age they'll never know the shade. That's a lovely idea, isn't it? But inside of that idea is this notion that there's going to be a time to come when, as the result of what I have done, something's going to change and everything's going to be honky-dory. In truth, it's the whole idea of a time to come. It's the whole idea of a heaven on earth, which doesn't exist. Where did the idea of a heaven on earth come from? Not from the scripture that says, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. The whole idea of heaven on earth is born out of human beings in hell, imagining a time to come when this earth will be a heaven because Jesus is going to come, or Muhammad, or whatever, something's going to happen and everything will be great. The whole sorrow of humanity is because they live from a consciousness that never stops believing that tomorrow the right action will take place and the result will be the positive outcome and the change of the world for every human being on the planet. It's never going to happen that way. The level of consciousness creates the misery and continues to develop it through the deceiving of itself. Listen, that has no authority except for one thing. What is the authority of this unconscious nature that is the source of time, the source of division, and the source of the endless seeking of a solution to the suffering inherent in living in this divided state. What is the authority that unconscious, lower consciousness, what is its authority over me? One at a time. The attention I give to it. Identification with it. Anybody else? See, no, its authority is my ignorance. That's its authority. And it has no authority outside of that. Because were it not for my self-ignorance, ignorance of myself as I am, I couldn't be deceived by that consciousness into believing that I'm going to do something, and 1 week from now or 10 days from now or 5 minutes from now I'm going to have some kind of awakening, and then the whole world's going to change. And it's not. Not in time. All true change is timeless, meaning that it is occurring in the moment of the action and the revelation and the release of the unconscious nature responsible for its continuity, or it's not happening. Here's a quotation for you, mine. Heaven on earth requires the transformation of earth into heaven. Heaven on earth requires the transformation of earth into heaven. And until this earth is transformed by those forces that come into it, whose will is greater than the passive nature it acts upon, until that happens, there is no heaven. But the minute it does, heaven is on earth. And then you are the human being who understands that. You're not looking out and hoping that other human beings are going to do something. You're not hoping that one day the world's going to be this paradise. And you know why you're not doing that? Because hope is the wrong action in the moment of conflict. That's why. The right action in the moment of conflict is what? Going back to the first question. Which means what? No action means what? I can feel myself being drawn into the next action, the next hope, the next promise, the next plan. I can feel it all. I can feel me blaming you for my limitation. The right action is to recognize the limitation of my present nature, isn't it? Wouldn't that be a right action? To recognize, you know what? I really don't know what the hell to do right now. The right action would be to see that and stop there, wouldn't it? While everything's talking to you and saying, what you've got to do is blah, 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 blah. And you understand that's all it can do is threaten you. And then depending, you might have to make an action that you aren't clear on. But if you have taken the first action, you have begun to clarify and separate who and what you are from this unconscious nature that is forever talking to you and dragging you through this iteration of relationships that lead nowhere. On we go, John.
Here is our third topic for tonight. It comes from Lynn. She says, what I would like to ask Guy concerns ceaseless prayer. I would love to hear Guy's thoughts on what ceaseless prayer means to him and how it might be applied in daily life.
So what is Lynn asking? Chris.
Is it really actually possible to pray ceaselessly?
So she says, is it possible to actually pray ceaselessly? Anybody else? What's Lynn asking? Ellen.
How can I have an ongoing relationship with the divine?
What must I do? Is ceaseless prayer the path to this relationship with the divine that I've imagined? She's asking that. Sally.
What is ceaseless prayer?
She's asking, in essence, what is ceaseless prayer? Can you help me understand it to some extent? Anybody else? Terry.
How can I keep the spiritual memory?
Okay, I can see that I kind of wander off into strange places, and when I do, it never turns out that good. And I've heard this thing about ceaseless prayer. I've even heard you, Mr. Finley, speak of it. What is ceaseless prayer? Now, let's do the thing that nobody wants to do. That's why we have these meetings. I told a story a long time ago. I'm going to adapt it ever so quickly to set the stage for the main point. It was about a mother and a daughter. Father had passed. And they moved into this new town. And the mother had a love of natural art, natural beauty. She collected stones and sticks and put things together. Just loved nature and had a natural beauty shop. Now, it wasn't ready. She was continuing to develop and getting ready for its grand opening when she heard that from time to time, when there are grand openings of shops, that the king would often come into the shop and not just buy things, but do all that he could to help the new person develop their love of whatever it was that they had built in the shop. You get the picture. And she actually, while she was going through those, could see from time to time, we're still in the carriage days. We're not talking about Lamborghinis. You know, the cage roll by, the coach roll by, king get out and walk into a shop. So she's all excited about this. She finally gets everything ready for the grand opening. Puts out a bunch of tea and cakes, like any kind of opening. And daughter's sitting there drawing on the floor in her crayon book. Mother, this is it. This is the big day. God, maybe the king will come. Maybe I'll have a visitation by something divine. 1 hour goes by, 2 hours go by, nothing. Not only no king, but nobody's even coming in the shop on its grand opening day. 4 hours go by, and she begins to moan out loud. What's wrong with everybody? Do you not? What's wrong with me? What am I missing here? And the daughter, listening to the mother, and the children shall lead them, says, you know, Mom, I think I know what's wrong. Go back to your crayon book. Go back to what you're doing. Okay. Another hour goes by. Mom, listen to me. I got to tell you something. What is it? You never turned around the sign that said closed, so it said open. So nobody's coming in because the store's closed to all appearances. You don't understand your store has a big closed sign on it. You think just because you ache or hurt from time to time that means you're open to the visitation of the king. It doesn't mean you're open to the visitation of the king when all you can think of is, I wish the king would come and free me of this conflict. The visitation of the king is a natural occurrence when at last a person realizes there is something in them that always has the sign that says closed. Ceaseless prayer. Why wouldn't it be the most natural thing in the world? I'm not talking about for the masses of human beings. Many are called, few are chosen. Why would it be as a man or a woman, why wouldn't, if I long for the king, if I long for the visitation of the divine, and I say that's what I long for. Of course, I'm just pointing out every now and then in this little first answer that I really long only when I'm unhappy. When I don't have a plan, when I'm not eating and running and drinking and doing the thing, that's when I long. When it looks like the money's a problem or my health, I long then. But the rest of the time, closed. And that's what you don't want to see. Because if you see that, then you start to understand, sweet God, what is it going on? And the very awareness of the actuality of this unconscious nature and its love of itself when it loves God, which isn't the love of God at all. It's the love of a me that thinks it knows what love is. In that moment, the more I see that, the more ceaseless prayer is practiced effortlessly. Because I understand that the unattended mind is the breeding ground of defeat. I understand that. It's not a notion on my part. I'm not hoping to understand that. I've been present enough times and had enough shocks in family, friends, finance, health, had enough shocks that I realized, God, Here I am, I just drove from Portland, Maine to Chicago. I never even knew I was in the car because I was so busy thinking about the pork chop I'm going to have. I was so busy thinking about how I was going to deal with my mom or my dad or my brother, so busy worrying about the money that it never occurred to me that me, so wrapped up in myself, is closed. So ceaseless prayer begins with the understanding, which will be born in you if it's not happening now. Ceaseless prayer is the understanding that left to myself, I'm dead in the water. Quite literally, let the dead bury the dead. I'm dead in the water. You think, and I'm going to talk about this more deeply on Sunday, you believe that treading water is the same as seeking the divine. Treading water is not seeking the divine because you don't know there is a current wherever you're treading and it is taking you further and further away. And you will, and millions exhaust themselves treading thoughts, treading plans, treading hopes, treading expectations that tomorrow the world's going to wake up and I'll somehow or other be part of that beautiful new kingdom. No, that's treading water. Putting off the work that you need to do is treading water. And what is the work you need to do? Going back to the first question, John, what is treading water? What am I doing?
I'm waking up and I'm watching the temptation to do what I've always done.
I come back to myself, and when I come back to myself, I'm in a relationship with the revelation that brought me back to myself, and then I'm in a form of prayer. I'm meditating. That's what meditation is a vibrant, vital, deep understanding in the moment that if I am not attending to my life, to witnessing, to observing, to being mindful, if I'm not doing that, my attention has been taken by something, and my attention belonging to that unconscious nature is praying for what it will get. You wonder why you're angry? You pray for it. I don't pray for it. Yes, you do. Every time you sit and think about a way to handle a person, you're not taking the right action. Because it's not the person that needs to be handled, it's the limitation you have of understanding them. So every time I'm caught up inside of something like that, I'm actually praying for the next conflict because I'm coming up with another solution. I'll be like this, I'll go there, I'll do that, I'll say these right things. And every last one of those moments where you identify with one of those images, shop closed. Why? Because what is the image that I'm identified with other than my own past and my own conditioning? You see it? Ceaseless prayer is born in the human heart to the degree in which the person sees that unless they are fully attentive at all times, they belong to something that has taken their attention where it wants to take them. Then ceaseless prayer, it comes naturally. It should come naturally to you. Even if it's not something that I'm, like in the Philokalia, Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. No matter what the prayer might be. And I can only tell you from my personal experience, because that's part of what this person is asking. Why wouldn't my mind understand it's so occupied with things that an unconscious nature has created and places on pedestals for me to be content with as I look with them? Why wouldn't that mind say, you know what? I need to create something of my own for myself that helps me understand what is going on with my life. And when you want to work your life that way, you'll come up with exercises for yourself. You'll come up with prayers for yourself. You'll come up with the understanding that I can't drive my car and just go to sleep. In this class, I can't come here and sit here and wait to be entertained. I need to be constantly swimming in the direction, as best I understand it, that I know leads to the heavenly shore. And what's the right direction to swim in? It's not with the current. On we go, John.
Here's our fourth question. This comes from Steve. Why does the mind want to destroy the host that allows the energy contained in it to exist, even if it's only for a moment? What is the mind's motivation for advertising this lie to the heart and soul? Does knowing the answer to this question provide any defense to this vile and destructive attack on what sees the lie in the first place? Is this a question that has any value, or is it just more mind nonsense that needs to be ignored?
What does Steve want to know? Anybody? Question a little convoluted. It's all right, I understand it. Heidi, what is Steve asking?
Why am I self-destructive?
Essentially, the real question behind this, why am I so prone to punishing myself and others? Where would the question even come to me about what is this mind that wants to destroy the host? Where would that question come from? It doesn't come just from looking out at the world. It looks at the fact that something every day in one of 1,000 different ways has got a little pitchfork and has given me a jab, and it's telling me do this, go there, say this, buy that, run. It's something's pushing me. It's painful. And then when something pushes me far enough, it finds someone to blame for the pain that it gives me. Yes or no? He also is saying that there's a temptation to do that. And it's evil, this temptation. So now I ask you, and you help Steve. Is temptation the problem? Is temptation the problem? Or is the real problem my ignorance of how quickly I identify with the reactions that produce the temptation? Isn't that the real problem? Not that there's some evil entity tempting me, coercing me to act against my brothers and sisters. The real question should be that we need to ask ourselves is, what is it in me that so instantaneously identifies with violence? Is the problem that I have a violent feeling? Or is the problem that something in me identifies with it and then acts along the line of that pain and pressure? That's the real problem, isn't it? And then I had this thought when I read this question. I didn't know how to frame it. I still don't, but I'll get there. So I don't know if you've ever been to New York. I don't even know if they still have this. But a long time ago in New York City, you were walking down the street, you'd walk along, and there'd be a guy with a card table, and he'd be standing there, and he'd have literally shells, 3 shells, and then there'd be something under one of the shells. Or he would have cards, he would show you the card, the ace of spades, and he'd have 4 other cards, and then he'd go bip, 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 like that. And if you could guess where the card was or where the shell was, the nut was hidden under the shell, if you could do that, you won. Well, does he make a living by letting you win? Now, here's somebody, they've been doing this for 5,000 years. And always going home and hating the guy that runs the table. Who's running the table? Here's the point. Is your deception a problem for me if I can see it's a deception? Do you understand the question? I blame you for my swallowing whole the identity that is produced when a certain prodding takes place. If I actually can see that this temptation to be angry, to be frightened, to be nervous, if I can actually see that this whole motivation to get ahead and become someone, to do that, if I could see that as a deception, does that deception have authority over me? Why? Because I see it. Next, kernel of corn. Is the husk of a seed corn, is it adversarial to the kernel that lives inside of it? Well, that'd be ludicrous, wouldn't it? So this husk that this kernel lives in seems to hold it in, press it in. I can't get out. Because that's the view of the mind that looks at something. There's this evil in the world and it's acting on me. Something is pressing me down. Something is destroying the world. And by the way, it is. But it's not evil the way you imagine evil. It is evil of humanity's belonging to imagination that produces solutions to the suffering inherent in imagination. The kernel of corn contained by the husk it's a complementary relationship. And not only is it complementary, but that husk, this evil world, this personality is the husk to essence. Personality is the husk around the soul. You're born into this world, and this world requires a certain amount of protection from just the insanity of it, not to mention the act of creation, all the time acting. So here's this little kernel, and it wants to blame the personality. It wants to blame your personality. It doesn't blame its personality. My personality is pretty darn good, to tell you the truth. If everybody had my personality, there wouldn't be war. No, war is because everybody has your personality. Is it or isn't it? I'm asking you to see it. Are you not a walking war? Of course you are. So is it evil that made you that way? Or is it you not knowing a thing about what moves through you and into you every time life brings along another moment in which the kernel is stirred and it's asked to awaken? So that instead of being strengthened by what seems to restrain us, we're captured by it and then blame the husk that is intended to be part of our liberation. Is good enough, everybody? On we go, John.
Our next question comes from Shannon. She says, I have a surgery I need to schedule for a benign cyst and cannot seem to overcome the panic and fear. I've increased my knowledge of the surgery and tried to see a couple different surgeons, but each has a different way of doing things. It has been consuming my life for almost 2 years now. Any suggestions on what I can read to help?
Read this. Write it down. The feel is real, the why is a lie. The feel is real, the why is a lie. What does that mean? I'm stuck because I can't come to a conclusion and take action. And I believe that what I'm stuck in are all of these alternatives. You are not stuck in alternatives. You are stuck in an unseen form of identification with negative imagination. That's what you're stuck in. A sense of self that is afraid of what it imagines will happen if it makes the wrong choice. At some point, you have to recognize that a mind that sits and vacillates back and forth, what do I do, where do I go? And then properly, I might add that, because so much of the time, if you go to I'm about to do Jeff Foxworthy. If you go to a doctor without knowing yourself something about what you are going to see that doctor for, Because you've read all that's available, you've done the Google, the AI, you have done your part. If you don't do your part when you go see a doctor, you have nothing to say about the problem that you have. Because then all you know is the authority that you hope might be right, but that you doubt probably doesn't have the whole story. Then you hope some other authority is going to come along. And you fail to see that unless you are informed, you belong to anyone and everything that says it knows better than you do. You have an intuitive aspect to yourself that is intended to be involved in this relationship with any doctor of any kind whatsoever, and that includes with me. So you have to learn, Lynn, to step into this crucible of this uncertain moment and understand that instead of letting what is false keep you from discovering what you need to do, you need to become the witness to, again, the right action. I need to understand what is responsible for this sense of fear that I've got. And then the last part is this. This served me so well over so many years. It's now ingrained. It's not a part of ever. I never have to think about this. One day you won't. When you have enough understanding, and part of that understanding is how you are constantly deceived by this imagination and this identification. You are deceived by your fear of pain. You are deceived by your fear of pain. When you understand how deceived you are, that understanding will lead you into a moment where you get, you know what? Nothing in me wants to do what my mind is telling me may or may not happen, but I know better now, and I will step into this moment with what I know is true. I'm going to find out from myself what is true instead of living in fear of everything that I say is false. You must act from the understanding, not from this sense of self that is a strange creation of all these conditioned thoughts and feelings. You must do that yourself. Otherwise, you'll be stuck for the rest of your life. In other words, get it over, Lynn. Get it over. Go do it. Make the best choice you can and go do it. Otherwise, you're going to stay in hell. And that benign, what'd she call it, a benign cyst? Yeah, it might cease to be benign. I'm not trying to frighten you. Just get busy. Take care of yourself. Taking care of yourself starts with what? Right action. Right action begins with what? Right understanding. Right understanding is what? I need to turn the close sign around to open. No, please, I'm trying to put it together in your mind. It's all one story if you can see it. And then once you've got the sign open, don't look and wonder what it is that's coming in the door. Welcome everything that comes in the door, because now you're in a right place to observe, to see, and to learn from what you do. Last one, I think, John, for tonight.
Sure. All right. The last one is based on a Krishnamurti quote that I'm going to read first, that the person has asked Guy to go deeper into. Here is the quote. I am the past being the race, the family, the experiences, the nuclear bomb, educated here and there, in this and that. I am all that conditioning and the innumerable influences that have shaped thought. Am I to investigate each thought, each conditioning, each influence? That would take innumerable years. Through that investigation, if I do not investigate properly and understand each investigation, I will further complicate further investigation because I have not completely understood the first investigation. So I see the complexity of investigation. And then here is the person's question. This is Terry. I understand the first two sentences, however, the remainder I do not. Is he saying that we complicate things because of the way the mind sees things, such as this overwhelming amount of identification that needs to be reconciled and therefore will take forever to be reconciled? Instead of just simply working to be in right relationship in the moment, not knowing what any of it means, but to simply be aware of what wants to steal our life yet once again. Is that the first investigation and always investigation? I would appreciate Guy's input.
So first of all, and Terry's here, the first two sentences that she says she understands, if she understood them, she'd have the answer to a question. So we're going to look at what she doesn't understand that she thinks she does. Kay writes, I am the past. The past being the race, the family, the experiences, the nuclear bomb, educated here and there, in this and that. I am all that conditioning and the innumerable influences that have shaped thought. If you understood that, you wouldn't have to ask yourself, am I taking the right action? Because to see that I am as I presently am, from this in this unconscious nature, if I saw that, guess what happens the minute that I see any evidence of that fact? Does my ability to see that I am my father, that my brother that died, I'm my brother. His temptations, they were just for McDonald's. Mine's for pizza. I'm my mother, died of a stroke. I'm my mother's mother, my father's father. I go all the way back to Siberia. I am everyone and everything that ever walked this planet because it is a single unconscious nature, a single kernel in which, a single husk in which lives a kernel struggling to be free. I am all of that. So if I see that here comes someone and they've said something to me, and in that moment I respond as I usually do, I'm responding from the past. I am the past. I don't think I'm the past because I'm so full of present pain. I am those thoughts. I think they're unique to me. No thought is unique to me, you. Not even the way thoughts are organized is unique to you, because the intellectual center organizes them according to the preferences of its essence. All of that is not unique to you, but I think I'm unique. And because I think I'm unique, I want to know why people made a nuclear bomb. You know why people made a nuclear bomb? To protect themselves from their neighbor. From the person at work that looks at you and makes that sideways comment. That's why nuclear bombs came into existence. Because all you have to do is take that summary resistance, that reaction that it comes up mechanically, and multiply that times 6 billion, add a lot of intelligence into it of scientific means, and you can produce any kind of weapon that's necessary to do what? To protect my interests, to forward my ambitions. So the first thing is, I don't see that. Because it's done. If I see it, is not in seeing the fact that I don't see that. Is that not the first action? Isn't it? Because altogether something new has to happen. It's not the continuity anymore of thought. It's not the continuity of my demands and my personality and what I know and how things, none of that is inherent anymore. And yet, here's to the point, in every moment all of that's there. Every moment all of that's there. The whole of my particular connection to that unconscious nature, the whole of that right there. Every reaction I have that doesn't turn into a revelation of something new is the continuity of that unconscious nature, every last one. So to begin to see that I'm about to be the continuity of the thing that I say I want to know the right action to take means what? I'm going to have to start recognizing as best I can that moment has just come again. I got irritated again. You see, you make it seem like it's so critical. I'm irritated again over nothing. over something huge. Makes no difference. I'm irritated. I want to lash out. I'm impatient. Irritation, impatience, in fact, every form of negative state born out of this summary resistance, every last one of those is what? Continuation of that consciousness. Every last one. Now, I can't argue the fact that I'm irritable. Anybody irritable here? I can't argue the fact that I'm anxious. I can't argue the fact that I rush. Can't argue the fact that I judge people at the drop of a hat. Can't argue the fact that I like to argue. I may not do it verbally, but man, it's going on in there, isn't it, Deb? Yeah. That's why people look like that in the end. Honest to God. Body takes on eventually what the warped personality produces. So now I want to know, according to your question, what is it that, hold on, let me get it out. Is this going to take forever? Because, well, I look at all of the problems I have, and I'm trying to deal with one at a time, because that's all I have to deal with is one at a time. Because the impatience, it's not there, seemingly, when I'm judging somebody. I never think to myself that I couldn't be impatient unless I had judged something. I don't see the massive correlation between the interconnectedness of these negative states and the identification that produces them. So here's the point. Did you ever see those movies? Because I have an insight, but the insight doesn't change the conflict I have. I'm trying to get on the same page with everybody. I just saw I just saw a movie. A lot of movies are like this. Here's a detective. You're supposed to be a spiritual detective. A good detective, he goes to the crime scene. And when he goes to the crime scene, what does a good detective do? What does a good detective do? Patricia said he looks for clues. Collecting evidence, isn't he? So you often see this, and it's not by accident. As above, so below. It's all the same thing. He's sitting there, and he's taking a picture of where that body was, picture of the table, what it was like when that happened, picture of the wall, picture of the windows, picture of the door jamb. He's taking snapshots of everything that transpired in that particular scene, in that crime. Now, why is he, and the really good detectives, they'll go back there and you watch them, and they'll sit there and they'll be looking at 3 or 4 pictures on the wall. And then a thought will come to them, and they'll go back to the scene of the crime, and they'll take another picture and another picture and another picture. Why is that detective doing that? Because the more pictures that he can collect about that scene and then see all of these pictures at once instead of just one, the more his mind begins to do what he can't do with thought alone, which is connect all of the images into a movement and a story that's responsible for everything that took place. And this is what good detectives are able to do. Because they learn to listen to something, and they learn to listen because the store is open. It's not closed, considering this one element I'm never going to get past as part of myself. You have to learn to understand that the moment where something comes up and you go, oh God, there it is again, store is closed. But there it is again, snapshot. Put it on the wall. Here I am, I'm so irritable. How can I be this irritable? And by the way, you and I have everything in the world. What is this sense of it's not enough? Where in the hell does that come from? I need more. Where does that come from? Snapshot. So I take a mental picture, born out of wanting to do what? To see something in real time that if I don't get a shot of it, it's gone, because I'll be on to the next thing. So the right action in that moment is to do what? to be a witness who takes a picture, meaning who takes the impression of that moment in as purely as I can. And when all of those impressions are placed there and I can begin to see the whole picture, I don't have to ask questions anymore because the story is right there and I'm in the story and the story's in me. You get it? That's 6. I think we'll stop there, and I think we'll actually stop here. 7:15. You've been good. Sorry for the problems. See you on Sunday. Don't miss Sunday. I don't know, was it Lynn that asked about ceaseless prayer? I'm going to go into something quite deep about why it is that instead of being in ceaseless prayer, we're in constant pain over the problems that our life brings to us. I'll see you on Sunday or Saturday. Or are there announcements, Kate? Does something happen? Or we just go? Yeah. Adios.